Welcome to TV Santa Barbara's Community Conversations, where we bring you fascinating discussions with local leaders about topics that everybody's talking about. I'm Dr. Cynder Sinclair, and I will be your host today. And our special guest is Kelly Mcadoo, Santa Barbara City Administrator. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you for having me, Cinder. So glad to be here.
Oh boy, we're going to have fun. There's so much to talk about. You are amazing. And your professional path is just, I find it fascinating. So if I have this right, over the last 25 years, you have held multiple and various executive positions in city government. And now, in May of 2024, you started as city administrator for Santa Barbara. Is that right?
That is correct. I came down here from the Bay Area where I had worked for several different cities in a variety of capacities. The last city I worked for was the city of Hayward and was there for 14 years
Wow.
and 6 as assistant city manager and 8 as city manager before the amazing opportunity in Santa Barbara came up.
Well, we are glad you're here. So, what is it about community service or city government that attracts you?
I think it's for me, it is the level of government that is directly impacting people's lives.
Mhm.
And so when I did my undergrad degree in political science and economics and international studies, and sort of talking to my professors, what do I want to do? Future career, and it's like I don't want to go to law school. No offense to the lawyers out there, but I said, well, and I don't want to be a politician. And so what else is out there? And so started thinking about, do I work for the federal government? Do I work for the state government? And it felt so far removed. I was like, I really want to have a more hands-on job. I want something where I can see the impact that I'm having on people's lives. And so in my brain, I thought that was foreign service. So initially I was interested in potentially working for USAID or in foreign service.
Okay.
And when I was getting ready to graduate, I wasn't quite ready to move internationally. And so one of my professors, he said, you should think about a master's in public administration and local government. And so he's like, you can always go do the international work later. Just get the graduate degree. And I said, okay, that sounds great. So was at the University of Kansas, and they actually are specialize in training city managers. That is their focus is really on urban
Mm.
management. And it was like it just clicked. I fell in love with it. And the first year when I was going through school, had an opportunity actually to meet the city manager of Fremont. And I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I was looking for. And so she hired me as an intern and moved to California. I knew one person in the entire state of California.
Oh
I
my
moved out
gosh.
here and I've been out here ever since. So it's been amazing.
Do you ever have conversation or get in touch with that one instructor that suggested that for you?
Yeah, I actually, it's fun. I still see him. He now teaches at, I think it's, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the university, but he's teaching at a different
Uh-huh.
university, and
Oh, okay.
he's running their public administration
Mhm.
department. So he actually still comes to the International City Manager conferences every year.
Oh, so you still get to see
Yeah, I
him?
get to see him pretty much every year, and he brings students from his program, and so
Oh.
it's great. So I love that. It local government is actually an incredibly small universe. That city manager who hired me from Fremont, she still works as a consultant in local government and
Oh.
lives in Southern California. So I see her, and she's still a mentor to me, and I appreciate all the advice she's given me over the last 25 years.
Gosh. Well, does this, instructor, do you think he realizes the impact he had on your life long term?
I don't know that he does. I don't know that he realizes how much that changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but not.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's like because of him I'm
Yeah,
where
yeah,
I am
yeah.
now. So
Well, it's because of you. You know why? Because you were open to ideas. I mean, you had your bags were probably already packed. You're gonna go somewhere internationally.
yeah.
But he suggested this to you, and you realized it was a good idea. You were open to it,
Mhm.
and you said, "Oh, okay, fine. Here I go."
And I think for me, I was looking. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do with my. initially when I went to college, I thought I was going to go to medical school because and so I started as a chemical engineering major, if you can believe that. And then was like, yeah, no, that's not going to be the path for me. And so
Oh.
for me, it was always like, how can I help? Like I always in my mind it was always about service
Mm.
to people, and so whether that was through medicine, and then ultimately it was like, oh, this is amazing. This is the local government. That's exactly what I want to do.
Gosh.
Yeah,
So you kept your mind open, and when you saw what you liked, you said, there it is. That's what I like. I'm going
exactly,
there."
exactly.
Good for you. That's an important lesson for anybody, whether it's students or people making transition in their life.
Yeah, and I would say, for me, it was always kept in my brain like I want to be a city manager, and so I didn't know where. Like I think that's also like having that open mind and the flexibility. Like, what is the goal, and then how do you build that experience base in your career? So like I was very intentional with the jobs that I took. And then also talking to my bosses, like, I think I need this experience. Is there a project I can work on so I can get some more land use experience, or I would like to supervise people because I know I'm going to need that. And so, like, really thinking about what are the skill sets that I need. And I think that applies to anyone who's working on building their career is like, where do you want to go? And then sort of thinking about like, how do you position yourself? Because as I tell people that I mentor, no one is going to look out for your career except for you. So you've got to do all
Yeah.
that.
That's a very good point
Yeah.
to have a clear goal and say, "Okay, what's it gonna take to get there?"
Exactly.
So now, your tenure so far in Santa Barbara has so here you've held all these other positions. Has anything surprised you?
I think a few things. Santa Barbara surprised me in what a small town it is.
Mm.
I am, everyone. It's amazing to me. It's got this international reputation, and so many people you sort of know Santa Barbara. But when you're here, yeah, there's a lot of tourists, but it's actually a really small town, and it's really nice. Like, I mean, I remember the first, like I'll go out to dinner and I'll just be sitting at a bar, and they're like, "Hey, are you the new city administrator? Or you look familiar." And so yeah, so that's really been a surprise. And it's interesting also the fact that Santa Barbara really is an island. I didn't sort of think about it in that
Mhm.
sense, but being in the Bay Area, Hayward is right just south of
Yeah.
Oakland. And so always just being sort of overshadowed by issues that were happening in San Jose, San Francisco, Oakland.
Mhm.
And so here, Santa Barbara really is the big fish in the pond, so to speak. And so a lot more just focus and attention, and also being cognizant of the role and responsibility that Santa Barbara has in also sort of being a caretaker for the region.
Mhm.
We have a lot of things to offer, and so how do we leverage that and support the rest of the county?
Yeah. So, I would imagine that a lot of people in the audience, aren't quite sure what does a city administrator do anyway? So how would you describe that?
Well, you'll laugh. So I always joke that I went to graduate school to become something I never knew existed until I went to graduate school to become it. I was like this city manager because growing up, I if you don't have a reason to be involved in local government, you think, okay, the mayor, like I know what a mayor is, but
Mhm.
no idea what a city manager is. And so basically the way I characterize it is it's the CEO of the city.
Mhm.
So and in the United States, we have 2 forms of local government for the most part. There's a couple other variations, but for the most part, you have a strong mayor form of
Mhm.
government, and then you have the council manager form of government. And so Santa Barbara operates under a council manager form of government. And that was that sort of schism between the 2 types of government was really a response to the machine politics of the 1920s
Oh.
on the East Coast. And so there, the mayor, handing out favors and to
Mhm.
his cronies and hiring his relatives into the government and all of that. And so this was a response. It's like we should have a form of government that really focuses on professional management and how do you
Mhm.
create that accountability, in that way. And so that's where the council manager form of government came from. And
Interesting.
so what that does is I am appointed by the majority of the council. They were unanimous in approving my contract, thankfully.
Yay. Smart
um,
people we have there.
yes, yes, but I report directly to them, but everyone else in the organization reports to me. So all of
Okay.
the department heads, so police chief, fire chief, parks and recreation, waterfront, public works, the water department, those planning, community development, all of those departments report to me. And so I work, to basically manage the day-to-day operations of the city.
So how many people is that?
That's about 1,100 employees.
1,100.
Yes. It's funny when I talk to sometimes I'll introduce myself and people, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "I'm the CEO of a corporation with about 1,100 employees and, our revenue of about 500 million a year." And everyone's like, "Oh, wow." And then they're like, "Really? What company?" I'm like, "Oh, the city of Santa Barbara."
Oh,
And so it
gee.
just but that's really, I mean, if
That's
you
what
think
it
about it,
is.
that's what it is. Yeah.
So 1,100. Okay, so how would you describe your leadership style?
Mm.
And you're connecting. I mean, connecting all these people, focusing them on your goals and
Yeah.
also.
I see myself as almost like an interpreter.
Mm.
And a facilitator, really, because I am the person who has to sort of take what our technical experts in the organization, our engineers, our planners, our public safety professionals, and help like frame the issues for the council. So what are as those issues are being presented to council, how is the council, what are the issues they need to focus on? What do we need direction on? Making sure that I'm sort of framing the conversation for the council. And then, there's a lot of other pieces. I also need to make sure that, I'm out in the community, that people are, I'm accessible to community members. I'm kind of like troubleshooter in chief, I guess. Like
Yeah.
whenever there's an issue, they come to me, and then a lot of times my staff can resolve it, but sometimes I get involved and try to help resolve issues. And then, making sure that the organization is high functioning. So one of the things that I love is the organizational development piece. So
Mhm.
I am a lifelong learner around organizational development. I love reading all the books, Jim Collins,
Oh, gosh.
all of
Yeah, yeah,
all the
yeah.
leadership books. And so trying to figure out how do you take those private sector sort of organizational concepts and bring them into the public sector and ensure that we have an organizational culture that enables us to provide the best services to our residents.
Well, and I've heard you say you've got 4 words that you use to guide you. I forget what they are, but they're pretty darn cool. So tell.
Yes, so when I was younger in my career, I said I feel like I need to have a philosophy or so, like everyone has like
Right.
their leadership philosophy.
Yeah.
It's not really a philosophy. It's just sort of what guides me. And so the 4 words are care, question, analyze, and perspective. And so for me, for
Care, question,
question,
analyze,
analyze,
perspective.
perspective.
Okay.
Yes. So care, for me, is number one always, because you have to care about the work that you do. You have to care about the people that you work with and for. And so, to me, just having that sort of rooted in that sense of caring for the work that you're doing and the people around you. Question, I think as a leader, you have to ask the tough questions, and you have to, even if you feel like you need to be the smartest person in the room, you need to let the ego go and ask the question like, "Hey, I don't get that. Explain that some more to me." And because if you're not understanding it, someone who's not enmeshed in government is definitely not going to understand it. And also just like, why are we doing that? Why do we do it that way?
Mhm.
And so just making sure you're asking those tough questions. And then analyze, obviously, being able to sort of look at the work and be analytical and bring that sort of the lens of like, okay, how do pieces fit together, and being able to do that analysis at root is really important. And then last is kind of just the perspective. Like the work is not, it shouldn't be who you are. And so just maintaining that sort of balance and understanding that your employees have lives as well, and trying to just keep it in like it shouldn't be all consuming. And so
Mhm.
just really trying to have other hobbies. I have a daughter, and so just really trying to make sure that I keep that balance in my life.
Balance.
Mm.
Yeah, that's an important
I
word.
I would say some weeks are better than others for
Yeah.
sure.
So what do you think, the top priorities
Mm.
of Santa Barbara, how would you describe them? I mean, we have a lot, but let's
Yes.
just talk about a few.
Yeah. Well, I think there a few, and I always start with the budget and the
Mhm.
city's fiscal position, and for me, that sort of underpins everything else that we do. Because if we don't have a strong financial base, we can't really do anything else.
Mhm.
And so grateful. In November of 2024, the voters passed Measure I, which was a half-cent sales tax measure to support city operations,
Mhm.
really sort of shored up and stabilized our budget, which was going through some challenges. But I think right now we really have to think about like how do we diversify the city's revenue base? As most people know, we are a tourism-based
Mhm.
economy. 50% of our sales tax
50%.
comes from tourism.
Oh, golly.
And so, that is very volatile. And so, my goal is also to think about like how do we position Santa Barbara so that there are other revenue streams coming in. So some of the things that we're talking about is can we leverage some of the land at the airport and bring in sort of companies that are going to bring in jobs and different
Mm.
revenue streams. And so really starting to think about how do we strategically position the city not just as tourism, but we also have, a robust industry base that will also allow jobs for people. So in addition to the financial piece, I think obviously the second priority is housing.
Mhm.
And we've talked so much about the housing crisis in Santa Barbara, and I think there was a recent study in the last few weeks that like housing the like Santa Barbara is one of the most unaffordable places to buy a house in the United States, which
Yeah.
is really scary. And when you think about trying to sort of for me particularly bringing in city employees who are not at
Mhm.
the, upper income scales in a
Mhm.
lot of these jobs, how do we attract and retain those employees? And I
Mhm.
think that's the same for a lot of our businesses
Mhm.
and industry in town is how do we keep employees and make sure that we have housing for everyone? And so we're working through that. I know there's a lot of work going on, but I think we'll be in the next couple of years working with the city council on a citywide strategic plan. And part of that, I would love to see like a housing strategic plan. Like
Mhm.
what is the strategy? A lot of people have done analyses on the problem, but like how do we now put that into action? And so I think that'll be some of the next steps. And then I think the third most important priority is what are we doing with State Street?
State Street.
What? I
Oh,
know it
yeah.
only took us halfway through the conversation to start talking about State Street. So um, we are in the final sort of stages of finishing the State Street Master Plan. We've been doing some pilot projects along State Street to try to see if we can do some things to really spruce State Street up. And I think one of the things to me is just beautification in and of itself is something that we need to be thinking about. And so, how do we do some investment in just the look and feel of State Street while we're starting to think about implementing the longer term master plan? And I think we'll also need to talk about, filling the vacancies on Street. How do we create some
Mhm.
incentive
Mhm.
programs? What can we do to encourage people to come and rent those spaces? So,
Gosh,
yeah,
so many. And
lots to
then
think about. And then, that's just like three things. And
yeah,
then there's all the other stuff that goes
yeah,
on in the
like
organization.
homelessness and
Yes.
just so many things. And people have opinions. Have you ever found somebody with an opinion about any of that?
In Santa Barbara?
Yeah.
No, never.
Yeah, lots of strong opinions about things that sometimes you might not think somebody would care that much about, but they do. And so how do you
Mhm.
keep your cool when everybody around you is so adamant about their point of view?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in this job is you have to learn not to take things personally.
Mhm.
And again, it's that perspective. How like this is I'm doing a job, and I try to as I've matured in my career, really tried to push back on people who attack people and not the
Oh,
problems.
oh, good.
And
Good
so
for
like
you.
really just sort of say like, hey, you can get really frustrated with what's happening, but the moment you start attacking staff or,
Mhm, mhm.
people in the, other people, that's when it's not helpful. We're not going to get anywhere. And then you're just going to cause people to shut down. And so I think, I approach every situation in problem solving mode. So like, listen, like you have to, sometimes people who are upset just need someone to listen to them
Uh-huh.
and sort of like, hey, what are the, like, and trying to really try to distill down what the root issues are. And so I think you have to have a lot of patience and just, just have some empathy for folks. I think, people, by the time they get to my office, they've probably already been frustrated 12 times along the way. And so I usually get the
Oh
maddest of
gosh.
the mad. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
really just like, and I think that's why it's so important for me. I leave a lot of time on my calendar just for meet and greets, listening, coffees, and just kind of hearing what's going on around the community and hearing from folks who are facing issues.
Well, and I think using that word empathy, I've heard you talk about the importance of that in sort of relationship building,
Mhm.
community building. Maybe you could tell us about
Yeah.
how you do that.
Well, I mean, I think it's again, it's just starting from a place of like I'm here to help, and I think that's something I try to reinforce with our employees as well is we are public servants. And so like if you didn't get in this job to be in public service, maybe that should be something you look at. And so really starting from that place. And, I think empathy is, when you're actually listening to hear what the problem is,
Mhm.
it allows you to really start to think about okay, what are they facing? And then how are they, how can we design some solutions around that? And we've been bringing in, and it's a methodology that I've used a number of times over the years, lean innovation.
Oh.
It stems from sort of the lean manufacturing
Mhm.
work, but it weaves in this empathy piece. And so it sort of came about through the startup world and the tech world. But it's been really fun when I was in the Bay Area connecting with folks who are kind of in that space.
Mhm.
And then how do we adapt this to the public sector?
Mhm.
And so I've a couple consultants that I've worked with, and we did a lot of that work in Hayward. And so bringing that training here, and I say it's not like a special project or we're not having like an innovation task force. It's a way to problem solve. And so it's just another tool in our team's toolbox so that they can go out and basically what it is you start with you learn all you can about the problem. We say you fall in love with the problem. And in government, a lot of times we're like, oh, okay, people have said homelessness is an issue. There's this program in this other city. Let's implement it. And so we spend a year like developing the program for Santa Barbara and we spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars and then we roll it out and it's like, "Oh, yeah, that didn't work." And
Oh
we've
gosh.
wasted all this time and money. And so this kind of flips it on its head. So okay, homelessness is the problem. Let's talk to some people first. Let's see like what elements of homelessness are really causing the most issues and then there, like, okay, let's as we've talked to these individuals, are there certain things that we can try as little small pilot projects to and before we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars really doing that work up front. And I think I think that's important whether we're designing a new ordinance, whether we're designing a new
Mhm.
program, a new service, is just doing that conversation up front before we put a lot of work into
Right, that is
designing
so
it.
wise and so practical, and I don't know, I don't think many people would think of a city doing that experimentation. In fact, I read something recently about something that you were experimenting with, and I remember thinking, "Well, isn't that an interesting approach and practical?"
Well, and I think there's also a fear factor in city government. It's like,
Mm.
"Oh, we're gonna get criticized if we try some,"
Oh, good
and
point.
and so I think there that, "Oh, you're wasting money." But I said, for me, it's like, well, I'd rather spend a little bit of money now, try something out
Mhm.
versus spend it like investing millions of dollars in something and then it's not working. And so
Yeah.
I think that to me is the argument for the pilot project. And we have to take a little risk and that's where, my job is to shield my staff members. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, hey, I authorized the pilot project. Yes. Okay, let's see if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we instead of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, we did something a little smaller to see if it would work.
And it seems to me you have an interesting way of, keeping the channels of communication open with your 1,100 employees.
Yes.
And so, yeah, tell us about how you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a challenge. And I think any CEO will tell you, like, trying to keep a pulse on the organization, connect with employees is always challenging. Couple strategies that I've used, which have been fairly successful in my tenure, has been I do quarterly Zoom calls. It was like
Mm.
the best thing that came out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And anyone in the organization can log on. And, it's great now because most people know how to use Zoom and they can do it on their cell phone. So you've got a park maintenance worker. He can sit there and
Oh,
watch the Zoom call on his phone,
oh my
take,
gosh, that's so great.
we give all employees the ability to take that hour that we
Mhm,
do that
mhm,
Zoom call.
mhm.
And usually we try to do like about 30 minutes of presentation on issues that are happening in the organization, and then we do 30 minutes where it's open Q&A and employees can ask anything and everything,
Oh,
and they
wow.
do. And so really, I think that openness to be like to answer the questions from employees is really helpful. And so a lot of times I'll have some of my department heads on with me to respond to those. The other thing that I do is for on Wednesday afternoons, I
Mhm.
usually block out a couple hours and I have open office hours for employees. So anyone in the organization can schedule 15 minutes of time to come and chat with me about any topic under the sun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of leaders talk about having an open door
Yeah.
policy, but, like, what employee is gonna wander into the
Yeah, yeah.
CEO's
Oh.
office and be like, "Hey, does she have 15 minutes to chat?" And that there's actually, time available. And so that has been, and it's been, for me, it's been amazing. The side benefit, when I was in Hayward, I promoted from within. So I already knew the organization when I became city manager, so
Mhm.
that made it easier because I knew who the employees were, who I went to for things.
Yeah.
And coming to Santa Barbara is like I've had to meet not only all the community stakeholders that I need to reach out to, but also trying to figure out how to meet employees. And so many
Mm,
employees have taken
right.
advantage of the office hours.
Oh,
And it's
that's
just
good.
it's been a great way to get to meet people in the organization. And so that's been super helpful.
Do you think in the beginning some people were kinda hesitant? Like, I don't know, you go first. Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay. Now tell us how it was.
absolutely. It was like they're like, "Is this for real?" And, like, there was a lot of, like, calling my executive assistant, like, "Is this, like, legit? Is this true? Like, can we do this?" And then it was funny because once the word got out, it was like, it's a lot of takers, so it's been great.
Gosh. So, let's say years and years and years from now,
Mhm.
um, you're looking back at your career here, your time in Santa Barbara. What would you like to be proud of?
Mm. Oh gosh. Well, I would love to be proud of sort of developing, you know, a housing plan for Santa
Mhm.
Barbara that the community really gets behind, and that people feel, there's not this argument about density. I think we can do density in a way that fits within the character of Santa Barbara, and I think there's ways to do it in the community. I'd also love to be able to have a legacy of just like the financial stability of
Mhm,
the
mhm.
organization, and that we've diversified our industry base and created some different economic
Mhm.
sectors to really support the organization. And I think what would, like, if in an ideal world, I would love to be able to solve the storm flooding problems. So that would
Oh,
be like
wow.
pie in the sky. But
Yeah.
we've got some assessments going on right now. But it's yeah. So there's a lot of things, but I think the flooding and really doing some of the infrastructure. We've
Mhm.
got a fire station we need to relocate. Kind of, some things, just really setting a foundation. I'm not going to obviously see all of the things happen, but creating plans and
Yeah.
a foundation that would enable things to continue on. So,
Like I said, those are some very smart people that hired you. I have a feeling you're gonna accomplish all that and then some.
well, we'll see. Hopefully.
Oh, golly. Can you describe for us a, pivotal experience, either
Mm,
personally or professionally, in your life?
gosh. There's so many. I think I'll talk about my dad for,
Okay,
okay,
that's
for
good.
yes,
That's a good
because
one.
he was in some executive leadership positions in the airline industry for a long time. And for me, he really modeled leadership behavior that I really admired. And I think that just watching that as I was growing up. So, while he was, in finance in that world, he would go down and throw bags with the bag
Oh
handlers, or he
gosh.
would like, kind of once a month go work as a flight attendant on a flight to, just make sure he knew what the experience of being an employee for the company meant. And so that has always resonated with me is like really understanding like what are the experiences that your employees are having, and and again it's the listening, like how, like, okay, what challenges are you facing, like, and they feel comfortable coming and saying, hey, we're having this issue, like what do we do, like how do I deal with it. And sometimes the best ideas come from the people who are doing the actual work.
Right.
So so I think that that has been just something that's shaped me. And I would say similarly, my mom, growing up, she did a lot of nonprofit service work.
Mm,
So just
mhm,
really, and I think that's where kind of the service mentality came from, is watching her work with, kids with challenges, and older adults. She just did a
mhm.
lot of community service work, and so that was, and she always made me come with her to
Oh gosh.
help out a lot of the time. So, yeah, so I think both of my parents, shaped me in a lot of ways. So I feel very fortunate that I had those role models.
That is great to be able to say that.
Yeah.
And boy, do we have a lot of nonprofits in town doing good work.
Yes. We do. We have a lot of nonprofits.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what would you say to a young person who might be thinking about going into a public service of some sort, maybe working in city government, being city manager, any of that?
I would say it's an amazing career. I mean, there are challenges, obviously, and a lot of, I think not everyone wants to be city manager, and that is fine. But there are good paying jobs. We get good benefits, and I think people overlook it. And
Mhm,
I think
mhm,
particularly, for folks who maybe didn't go the college route, there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, I look at our water treatment plant,
mhm.
and, you can get your water treatment plant operator certification, and you don't necessarily have to have a college degree to do
Mm,
that. And so we've done a lot of things where we've created like operator in training. So we like
mhm.
bring people in and then allow them to get their certification while they're on the job. And those jobs are, I mean, you're making a lot of money, and it's a great job. And so I think, there's so many different opportunities in city government. I mean, fire, police,
Oh, right.
dispatch, animal services, planning, engineering, building inspection. There's like you could it's like, it's like Sim City. There's everything that you ever wanted. And Parks and Rec, if you
Oh
like,
gosh.
if you want to be a swim instructor, if you want to be a lifeguard. And so I think, the biggest thing is really sort of taking a look at, and like
Mhm.
just kind of keep it like, okay, what are all of those different opportunities? And there's a variety of different ways to get there. And a lot of cities, we're working on trying to develop a citywide internship program.
Mm.
So
Oh.
how do we, and I would really love to see more partnership with our school district,
Mhm.
where we're creating pathways for students that, and how do we funnel people who are already here in the community into those local jobs.
Yeah, that's a great that's a great goal. Great
Yes.
idea.
So Hilda and I are, we've talked, we've had some initial conversations,
Oh,
but
good.
yeah, so it's been great working with her, and
Oh,
I think, yeah,
she's really something.
yeah, so it'll be, hopefully we'll be able to do some things around that.
So I think I heard you say one time, something like, "Well, people don't even think about city administration or any until something goes wrong."
Yeah.
Something very basic.
Mhm.
Like, give me an example.
Well, so it's a joke. It's like it's the part of government that touches your daily life and you don't even know it. So turning on your water, flushing your toilet, the stoplights, calling 911. There's a stray dog in your front yard. All of those things are things that local government does, and I do. It's like, well, and here in Santa Barbara, like making sure the beach is clean, like those things. It's just, oh yeah, that's the city. So.
Gosh, such a broad scope and everything's so important.
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay, so I've heard you refer to your daughter,
Yes.
and so I think that's just a fascinating story, so fun. Equestrian competition. Oh my word. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, so she started riding horses. She does hunter jumper, back probably like 7th grade, I think. So she's a little late in starting, but just, fell in love with horses. I tried her in every other sport. I'm like, anything else, sweetie? Like anything? Are you sure? Little did I know where it would lead us. And so she rode all through high school, and then ended up, she's currently attending University of Lynchburg in Virginia, and has started on their equestrian team there. And so she's trying to figure out like the college life, and does she want
Yeah.
to continue to do that, or so she's like, oh, maybe I'll try barrel racing. I'm like, okay, great. So we'll see. And it's great because Santa Barbara, obviously there's a lot of opportunities to continue her horseback riding. So we'll see where she goes with that. So
Oh gosh.
yeah.
She's lucky to have you for her mom. Oh, sure, honey, you could try that.
She's lucky she's an only child. That's why. I said if you had a sibling, we would not be able to do this. So yeah, it's been good though.
And I hear rumor that you've got a couple of darling doggies.
Oh yes, yes, my dogs. They are. I have a corgi named Addison, and a dachshund mix named Bailey, and so they are. Yeah, 7 and 2 now, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, so they will not be in public because they do not play well with others. Everyone always asks me, they're like, "We never see you out like at restaurants with your dogs." I'm like, the one time so my older dog, the corgi, she just gets very territorial, so she barks at everyone. So I was like, "Oh, I'll take the dachshund. We'll go out to dinner." And so I'm sitting there and I tied the leash around, and next thing I know, she had chewed through the leash
Oh
and she had
no.
taken off, and
Oh
I was like,
gosh.
"And here we go." So I had to chase her down through the restaurant. I was like, "Yeah, we're not doing this again." So yeah, but she's matured a little bit, so maybe we'll try again.
Yeah.
So,
Oh
but they're
goodness.
fun, and it's been great getting settled. Living over on the east side, and really
Mhm.
enjoying that. And I just one of the things I love about Santa Barbara is how walkable everything is, and
Mhm.
just that was one of for me. I really wanted to be walking distance to downtown, walking distance to
Mhm.
the beach, and so was able to find a spot.
Yeah.
So really fortunate.
And you joined Newcomers Club.
I did join the Newcomers Club and been having a lot of fun. Yeah,
Oh,
that's been
good.
great.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, what would you like people to know about the city of Santa Barbara?
Hmm. I think what as I said before, it's a feels like a very small town, and I think
Mhm.
a lot of people have been here for a long time, or have spent most of their professional lives or their adult lives in Santa Barbara, and and kind of feel like, oh, all of the stuff that we're dealing with is unique, and we're like no one else is facing. And I would say Santa Barbara is an incredibly special place, but the issues we're facing are not unique. I think every city in California
Mhm.
is dealing with homelessness, is
Mhm.
facing a
Mhm.
housing crisis, financial challenges. How do we revitalize downtown? And I think the amazing thing about Santa Barbara is we have so many resources here, and so I feel like it's my job to figure out how do we have the city partner with our nonprofit and foundation community. How do we partner better with the business community, and really
Mhm.
creating those relationships, because that's the only way we're going to address some of these really difficult issues is
Mhm.
you've got to do it in partnership. There's no the city can't do it by itself. None of these agencies can do it by themselves. So we really need to be working together. And so my job is, I think, like kind of the networker. So I'm pulling all the people into the web so we can
Ooh,
come
yeah.
together.
So, a lot of collaborations and
Yeah.
actively searching those out,
Yeah,
fanning the
exactly.
flames of that.
And really taking advantage of the brain power that we have in this community. It's what one of the things that surprised me was how many people, came here to retire. And so it's like I had this amazing professional career, and then I just loved Santa Barbara, so I'm here, but they're not ready to be fully retired, and like how do I contribute my professional skill set, and still have a meaningful purpose. And so I think there's a lot of that to be leveraged in the community.
Yeah. So, I'm really glad you're working with Hilda and the schools in helping them understand what a great opportunity, employment opportunity,
Mhm.
city government can be
Yeah.
for young people.
Yeah.
That's just, I wonder if that has that been done before? I mean, some of the things that you're doing now, did you like I don't know, experiment with them or do them in other places?
Some of them, it was really interesting. We had a program in Hayward, which I was great, with our continuation high school. So
Mm.
kids who had like
Oh,
really kind of the most struggles in their lives,
yeah.
and a woman named Davita Scott, just phenomenal, just amazing, inspirational young woman, and she created this program called the Raising Leaders, and she got all of like me, the mayor, council members, all these folks to basically come and sort of mentor and talk to these kids who wanted and like, hey, what do you want to do with your life? Just because you're at the continuation high school, it doesn't mean you can't have a job. And so we actually created an internship program.
Mm.
And so we had some of her students worked in our fleet maintenance shop as interns, worked in the city manager's office as clerical interns, really trying to like help them understand like there are jobs that and you can make a good living, and how do you do that? And so my favorite story was kid who had been in foster care
Mm.
and lost his parents, and he wanted to be a firefighter, and so
Mm.
he basically started doing kind of ride-alongs and internships with our fire
Mhm.
department, and then got hired on with the county fire department once he went through his
Oh,
got
man.
into paramedic school, and and it was just like but so I think there's so many opportunities like that, and how do you just create the pathway? And that's where that relationship building comes in. Like you start the conversation, like, could we do this? Can we do we can do this. Let's do this. And so and just that willingness to try something different.
Gosh, that is great. So I think I remember you saying that you're building an intern program here.
Yes, and that one is, I think, not quite as similar as the one in Hayward, but just how do we create opportunities so young people can see what is
Mhm.
available in city government, and I think it can be a really cool program because in addition to just having them available and working in different departments in the city, doing some group activities together, so really like helping them understand like
Mhm.
what it means to be an intern and work for the city. So. Yeah, so more to come. There's
That's exciting.
a lot I want to accomplish, and I have to,
Yeah.
some limited time constraints. So just trying to figure out how the pacing and the cadence of getting all of that
My
done.
gosh. Well, I'm excited just listening to it. So we only have a couple minutes left. Is there
Okay.
anything else that you want our audience to know?
No, I just I'm so grateful to be here, and the community has been so welcoming, and it has just been amazing, and I'm just really grateful and really excited, and hope to have a long tenure in Santa Barbara, and
Yes.
I'm just grateful to be part of this community.
Good. Well, we're glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming on our show to share all these fabulous ideas with us.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
And thanks for joining us on Community Conversations, and we'll see you next time.